Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I wanted to show you how to scan for high APR pools using Krystal. I've been using Krystal for a long time. I think it's a great platform. And one of the best use for Krystal is to use it to look for high APR pools. You can go to this hot pools tab to take a look. So I'll show you guys exactly how I use this. You can adapt it to your own needs as well. And if you guys are new here, my name is Richard. I'm a yield farmer and investor. I've been able to make a pretty good amount of passive income from crypto. If you guys want to check out my portfolio and my current strategy, you can take a look at this portfolio update playlist here. But basically in this video, I will show you exactly how I find high APR pools using Krystal. If I'm looking to deploy new capital, a few things that you should be watching out for because sometimes the data is not accurate. Every platform is like this, so nothing is like 100%. So you gotta know how to use these tools properly to get the most out of it. And as always, this is not financial advice. Please do your own research before making any investment decisions. And here I am on this hot pools tab, and we can see a bunch of different networks that Krystal currently supports: Ethereum, Optimism, BNB, Solana, Unichain, as well as a bunch of other ones as well, like Base and Arbitrum. And we can see Krystal currently supports these decentralized exchanges. And what I really like about Krystal right now is that it supports Uniswap v4. So if I'm trying to look for a Uniswap v4 pool, Krystal is probably the best way to do so because a lot of other tools do not support this yet. So what I want to do before I dive into different pools, I want to set my filters. And I personally like to tick off this 1 hour APR off because I'm a mid to long-term investor. I don't really care about the 1 hour APR. I could keep like the normal APR tab on, the total value locked on, the volume and the fees. And then I also don't really look at this drawdown or price volatility either because I prefer using other platforms like TradingView to look at my charts. And then I can turn this on as well, the volume to the TVL ratio. But really what we care the most about is this 24-hour fees to total value lock ratio. And I'll explain why in a second here. So I can apply or I can add additional filters. For example, if you guys want to aim for safer pools to be in, I can tick on this total value lock tab. And let's say I want to filter for pools that have at least $1 million in it. I can set this to infinity by clicking on here. And then if I hit apply, it will filter out all the lower total value locked pools. And I can refresh this data at any time here as well. So if we're trying to go for a broad scan, what I like to do is filter by the fees to total value locked. The reason I do this is because the fee tier is different for each pool, right? Some pools are 0.3%, 0.25%, 1%. So the amount of fees and the total value locked are all different. So then by filtering by this tab, we can see the highest APR pool. The APR is calculated by the fees divided by the total value locked, right? So if I want to look for the highest APR pool, then I want to make sure I'm filtering by this metric. Here we can see different pools like, for example, Flock USDC. I'm not sure what Flock is, but I can look into it if that's something I'm interested in. There's Sol to USDC, Zora to USDC, Arrow to Coinbase Bitcoin, Pump to USDC. And basically, I could also bookmark like different pools that I'm interested in. For example, if I want to look into this Arrow to Coinbase Bitcoin, I could add to the favorite list as well. And then maybe I want to compare like these pools as well, like ETH to Arrow. One of them is on Aerodrome, and then another one is on Uniswap, so I could add that to my list as well. So the first part of my process, if I'm trying to do like a broad scan, I basically go through the list and try to filter out what I'm interested in, which assets that I want to accumulate, and which assets I believe would go up in price. I don't really want to be yield farming tokens that have high APR, but has a lot of risk of it going down in value, right? The reason why is because if your fees don't cover like the asset depreciation, so if your asset declined by like 70, 80%, but the APR you earn is not enough to cover the loss, then you will lose money over time, right? So for example, I could tick on this pump and USDC as well. Pump is a token by the token launchpad called pump.fund. So if I want to basically invest into this token, I want to dig deeper into like the tokenomics, what's the use case for it, what's the bull and bear case for it, and basically do my research from there, right? But this initial process, I'm just bookmarking like the different pools that I want to look into. Maybe like ETH to Kita here. Kita is a newer blockchain that is trying to like go for like high speed transactions. So I can look into that if I want to. And there's a bunch of other tokens as well, right? If I go further and further down, like there's Virtual to USDC, Zora to ETH, Pendle to USDT, that could be interesting as well. And one metric that I really like to look at as well is I look at the volume compared to the total value locked. Generally, if I don't have this fees to total value locked ratio, I kind of want to look at that. And the higher APR pools for the 0.3% tier, like for example, this ETH to USDC, I want to look for the volume to be roughly at the total value locked or higher. So that's what I personally look for the 0.3% fee tier. And for the 0.05% fee tier, because we need more volume to generate more fees because the fees are lower, then I want to look for a volume that is at least 5 to 6 times the total value locked, like this ARB to USDC pool here. Or if you basically use this metric, this 24-hour fees to total value locked, roughly 0.2 and above is usually a great sign. And basically I could just keep going down and see which assets that I'm bullish on or that I want to look into. For example, some people consider like Chainlink a more blue chip asset, right? So if I want to basically keep a track of that, I could do that. So that's how you can filter for different pools. And if you want to basically find like the lower cap altcoins, you could adjust the total value lock to be at like 100K as well, because a lot of the smaller caps are going to have that. And basically this list is going to be more crowded. So I have to look into it. For example, Turbo is a meme coin that I've heard about. And I want to make sure that I hop back to the first page. Just a bunch of meme coins here, right? So basically, if I don't want meme coins, that's why I personally prefer like the higher total value locked if I'm using Krystal. And one thing that you guys can do as well is to just click on this see all for this blue chip pools tab. And if I hop back to the first page, I'm going to see that these are mainly blue chip assets here. For example, wrap Bitcoin to wrap stake ETH, right? And then I could again filter by the fees to total value locked to make sure I get like the highest APR pools. I could be looking at this OKB to USDT pool, for example, and try to figure out what this OKB token does and do more research into it. There's BNB and ETH has been doing pretty well recently. This is a 1% fee tier, seeing like the volume really close to the total value locked. That's quite high. So I could look into that, especially if I hold a lot of Ethereum or BNB and I'm bullish on those two assets, then I could basically dive deeper into that. And let's just say I want to click into Link and Ethereum pool here. What I really like about Krystal is you can basically see the history of the total value locked, pretty similar to Revert Finance. And you can see here the total value locked right now is around 200 something K. The 24-hour volume has been really high at $2 million. So almost a 10x from the total value locked number. And I can see how consistent this volume is as well. So when you guys see like the higher total value lock and the volume is also catching up, this is a great sign here. And over the last couple of days, the volume has been pretty high. And I can look at this APR tab as well. And let's see the APR, it hovers around this like 50 to 100 something percent here, right? And your actual APR might be different depending on the ranges you set. And what I want to look at as well is this liquidity distribution. So if it's like really flat or if like there are a lot of liquidity that is out of range, that's typically the best APR pools, especially if the volume remains high, because the higher the volume, the more fees you're going to earn, right? But your fees is going to be distributed to the liquidity that is in range. So if the liquidity has a really high peak, it looks like a really tall mountain, then your APR is lower, right? Right now, it looks totally fine. there's like a block of liquidity that is more concentrated. But for a volatile pair like this tight concentration is not that much. So this would be out of range all the time, right? So I'm not very worried about that. And I could set the range as well. Like if I go for this wide range, narrow range, full range, I will see this estimate APR here. So based on this estimate, 16% APR for a full range is really good. When I'm comparing APR, I typically like to use full range just to make everything else constant and the comparison more fair. I like to look at the full range. But when I'm actually yield farming, I might not go that wide, right? I could go with this wide range here. It says wide range, but I typically like to go even wider than that because a lot of times the prices are going to move by more than 30% on each side, right? And here I can look at the chart as well. I could switch this to a daily chart. I could even set this Ethereum as the quote asset, which is the main chart that I want to look at in most cases. Go to the daily chart and I can zoom out here and look at the trends, right? So based on the daily chart, if I just map out the support and resistance of Link compared to Ethereum, I could see that most of the time the prices bounce around this 0.004 range, where Chainlink is really cheap compared to Ethereum. A lot of people start rotating and buying Chainlink. So that's a potential lower bound that I could set. And that area is also where I would be looking to enter as well if I want to be yield farming this pair. Because when I enter low and the price rebounds, I'm going to have some divergence loss. But that divergence loss is a good thing because I'm gaining more ETH in the process, right? If you guys have never yield farmed concentrated liquidity pools before, basically what we're doing is if I'm holding ETH to start with, let's say like 10 ETH, and I deposit into the pool, I would need to swap some of my Ethereum to Chainlink, right? You can see here, I would need like 42 something percent Chainlink based on the ranges that I set here. If the price of Chainlink is outpacing Ethereum by gaining in value over time, whatever Chainlink that I bought is getting sold back to my Ethereum that I initially swapped for. And as long as it's trading above my entry, I would always have more Ethereum than what I started out with, right? So the entry is important as well. If Chainlink is very expensive compared to Ethereum, we don't want to be swapping a ton of our Ethereum for Chainlink, right? It just doesn't make sense, right? If an asset is overvalued, we don't want to buy too much of that asset. But if the asset is undervalued, that's the best time to hop into that asset. So if I want to set the lower range to be more aggressive, I could keep that 0.004. Or if I want to be slightly less aggressive, but still pretty aggressive, it could be at this 0.0038 mark, right? If I look at the chart, that's usually where the prices bounce. And then at the top of the range, if I want to optimize for fees and I want to stay in range for a longer period of time, then my upper range could be around 0.0086. This is as tight as I personally would go. I don't like the range chasing strategy because you could be getting a lot of APR, but the problem is if the market price dumps really hard, let's say you enter back here with a tight range, you're going to suffer a ton of losses. And if you don't lock in the losses, you would basically earn no yield in the process, right? That's why I like a wider range here. And you can see even with this wide of a range, Krystal is estimating roughly 86-87% APR. So really solid here, especially for a large cap pool. We could look at the volume consistency in the chart as well. And sometimes the volume would drop sharply if people pull a lot of liquidity out of the pool, because then the large swaps would not run through this pool, right? But the APR seems pretty consistent over the last few weeks here. But if you see like when the trading volume is really low, the APR is also really low as well, right? Roughly 10 to 20%. Now it's coming back up to like above 100%. So that's one example of the blue chip asset, right? If I want to take a look at more blue chip assets, I can look at a bunch of different pools, right? For example, if I hold more BNB and Link, I don't really want to hold that much Ethereum. I could be yield farming with this pair. And then there's a bunch of crypto to stable pools as well. So that's a broad scan where we're prioritizing the APR first. Then we pick like the different assets that we might want to look into or that we're already bullish on. And then the next type of strategy that I want to show you guys is the token first approach. I already know which token I want to yield farm with. And then now I'm finding the pools afterwards to see which pools have the best APR. So one example of this could be like Pendle to Ethereum. If you guys don't know what Pendle is a yield fixing protocol similar to like a zero coupon bond. So you can buy stable coins for like, let's say $100 worth of stable coin. You can buy it for like $97 or $98. And then after a month, you could redeem that for like the full $100, right? That's basically what Pendle is. And I could see here right off the bat, I can pull up a bunch of different Pendle to Ethereum pool. Once again, I can filter by this fees to total value locked. And then Pendle, like a lot of like mid to lower cap altcoins, the volume is not that high yet. So the APR is a little bit lower. That's completely fine as long as I'm bullish on the asset. I personally don't try to like over optimize for APR. I always want to be yield farming like the asset that is bullish rather than trying to be in the highest APR pools. Because then if you're picking like bad assets, you could get into trouble like I explained earlier, right? So here I like to look at this Pendle price in Ethereum terms. I can set this to Ethereum as well. Look at the daily chart. And right now it's still at a great entry. I'm currently in Pendle to Ethereum pool as well. But here what you guys can see is that this pool is quite concentrated. I talk about like how the shape would look like a tall mountain, right? This is what we see here. So the APR for this pool might not be as good. I could set it to full range. This is the pool that is on BNB chain. You can see the full range is not really giving me an APR estimate. That's fine. I could just hit this wide range tab where it basically sets like a 30% buffer on each side. The APR is 36%, and I can compare it with different pools, right? For example, these pools on Ethereum mainnet or these pools on Arbitrum. So I could click on this 0.3% fee tier on Arbitrum here and see what it pulls up. If I hit wide range to keep everything consistent, also roughly 30 something percent. So slightly lower here on Arbitrum and then 0.05%. I could take a look as well. If I click the wide range, you can see this one actually has a higher APR at 46 something percent. Because if I zoom out, you guys would actually see that it also has like a tall mountain shape, right? But because the price currently is not trading at the peak, the APR of this pool is higher. So if I enter right now, this pool would be the better pool. Compared to this 0.3% fee tier pool, this 0.05% currently would have a higher APR, right? I could look at the APR consistency as well. Sometimes it spikes up by quite a lot, but more recently it's pretty stable. It's just kind of chilling here around this 40 to 50% APR. I could take a look at this previous 0.3% fee tier pool as well. Similar pattern, a spike in APR when the prices are moving more aggressively, and then now it's still chilling in this zone. And I can take a look at this V4 pool as well as this V3 pool on Ethereum mainnet. So I'm currently on Ethereum mainnet just for more security. And because when I was looking at it, the APR is quite high. You can see this Ethereum mainnet pool that I'm in, this 0.3% fee tier, with the same exact range. Again, because we're not at the peak of the mountain, the APR is quite good, right? At 67 something percent. So just because like the initial filter shows you that, okay, this pool is better, the fees overall is higher compared to like the other pools. But after you guys actually dive in, the APR is typically lower because like the high APR goes to this tight range liquidity that other people are yield farming with, right? And if you guys want to check out like why I prefer wide to tight range strategy, you could search for that on my channel as well. I like wider range strategies because I can have more capital gains as well as less capital loss while earning a decent amount of APR in the process. It's just much less risk overall. That's why I run mostly wide range strategies. So 67%, and let's take a look at this V4 pool as well. To see, click on the wide range, make sure the range is the same. this APR is still a little bit lower at 36%. Just by comparing here, this pool is likely the winner, this 67% pool, on this 0.3% fee tier on Ethereum mainnet, and the APR is pretty consistent as well. So that's the whole process that you guys need to go through when you're comparing the APR for each asset. Make sure that you understand what the liquidity concentration is. You compare the different volumes and stuff like that. And if you guys want to learn more about how to safely yield farm concentrated liquidity pools, be sure to check out the other videos on my channel. For example, this video on how to set ranges, you can take a look at that. I try to give you the best information because I've lost a lot of money yield farming concentrated liquidity pools as well. And I've developed these strategies so hopefully you don't have to go through the same painful process. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.